I'd like to begin with a memo from God regarding life. Your life and my life, all of our lives. A memo from God regarding life. I am God. Today I will be handling all of your problems. Please remember that I do not need your help. If life happens to deliver a situation to you that you cannot handle, do not attempt to resolve it. Kindly put it in the SFGTD box, the something for God to do box. It will be addressed in my time, not yours. Once the matter is placed into the box, do not hold on to it. If you find yourself stuck in traffic, don't despair. There are people in this world for whom driving is an unheard of privilege. Should you have a bad day at work, think of the man who has been out of work for years. Should you despair over a relationship gone bad, think of the person who has never known what it's like to love and be loved in return. Should you grieve the passing of another weekend, think of the woman in dire straits, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to feed her children. Should your car break down, leaving you miles away from assistance, think of the paraplegic who would love the opportunity to take that walk. Should you notice a new grey hair in the mirror, think of the cancer patient in chemotherapy who wishes she had hair to examine. Should you find yourself at a loss and pondering what is life all about, asking what is my purpose, be thankful. There are those who didn't live long enough to get the opportunity. Should you find yourself the victim of other people's bitterness, ignorance, smallness, or insecurities, remember, things could be worse. You could be them. Always remember, the greatest oak was once a little nut that held its ground. Getting over it and what really matters. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 in God's book, the Bible is. We'll take time again to read the entire chapter. Ecclesiastes 4, beginning at verse 1. Let's stand, please, in honor of the reading of God's word. Ecclesiastes 4 and verse 1. Again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has yet to be born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to take warning. The youth may have come from prison to the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty within his kingdom. I saw that all who lived and walked under the sun followed the youth, the king's successor. There was no end to all the people who were before them. But those who came later were not pleased with the successor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Amen, and you may be seated. What really matters, and we began looking at this last time we were in Ecclesiastes, beginning where and with what the preacher preacher does in chapter 4, and that is a concern about the abuse of power. Verses 1 to 3, again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. A concern about the abuse of power. And remember what we noted and defined and applied. Power is more than just the office of an elected position. Power is about influence. We all have influence, therefore we all have power. And the ability, the opportunity, responsibility and accountability over how we use it or abuse it. Get that? We all have power. And along with it, the ability, the opportunity, the responsibility and the accountability over how we use it or abuse it. Two church members were talking about questions they would like to ask God. I wonder what questions you would like to ask God. And one said, I would like to ask God why he allows poverty, famine and injustice when he could do something about it. And his friend said, well, why don't you go ahead and ask him? And the man answered, he said, because I'm afraid that he will ask me the same question. Every human power, from the House of Commons to your house, is limited to under the sun and will be held to account by the highest authority who is not just above the sun, but above it all. Under the sun, the oppressed wish they had never been born. But above the sun, the oppressors will wish they had never been born. A concern about the abuse of power. Are we likewise concerned? What really matters? A wife called the doctor one morning saying, Doctor, please come quickly, it's my husband. And the doctor calmly replied, he said, what is the matter? And the wife said, well, he got up this morning, he took his vitamin pill, then he took his appetite suppressant, his antidepressant and his tranquilizer. He also took an antihistamine and some benzedrine, and then he lit a cigarette and there was this explosion. A concern about the absence of peace. A concern about the absence of peace. Henry David Thoreau wrote, most men in this world live out their lives in quiet desperation. Most men in this world live out their lives in quiet desperation, and occasionally it boils over, increasingly it explodes. Henri Nouwen observed, over the last decades we have been inundated by a torrent of words. Wherever we go, we're surrounded by words. Words softly whispered, loudly proclaimed, angrily screamed. Words spoken, recited or sung. Words on records, we'd say these days, CDs, in books, on walls, in the sky. Words in many sounds, many colours, many forms. Words to be heard, read, seen, glanced at. Words which flicker on and off, move slowly, dance, jump, wiggle. Words, words, words. They form the floor, walls and ceiling of our existence. He says, recently I was driving through Los Angeles and suddenly I had the strange sensation of driving through a huge dictionary. Wherever I looked, there were words trying to take my eyes from the road. They said, use me, take me, buy me, drink me, smell me, touch me, kiss me, sleep with me. In such a world, who can maintain respect for words? One of our main problems is that in this chatty society, silence has become a very fearful thing. For most people, silence creates itchiness and nervousness. Many experience silence not as full and rich, but as empty and hollow. For them, silence is like a gaping abyss which can swallow them up. As soon as a minister says during a worship service, let us be silent for a few moments, people tend to become restless and preoccupied with only one thought, when will this be over? I've finished 6 pillows in needlepoint, and I'm reading Jane Austen and Kant, and I'm up to pork with black beans and advanced Chinese cooking. I don't have to struggle to find myself, for I already know what I want. I want to be healthy and wise and extremely good-looking. I've learned new glazes in pottery class, and I'm playing new chords in guitar, and in yoga I'm starting to master the lotus position. I don't have to ponder priorities, for I already know what they are: to be good-looking, healthy and wise, and adored in addition. I'm improving myself with the tennis pro, and I'm practicing verb forms in Greek, and in primal stream therapy all my frustrations are vented. I don't think I have to ask what I'm searching for, since I already know what I seek: to be good-looking, healthy and wise, and adored and contented. I've bloomed in organic gardening, and in dance I've tightened my thighs, and in consciousness raising there's no one around who can top me. And I'm working all day and I'm working all night to be good-looking, healthy and wise, and adored and contented and brave and well-read, and a marvelous hostess and bilingual, athletic, artistic. Won't someone please stop me? When will this be over? That's the quiet desperation of many. Won't someone please stop me? The collateral damage of many a life, as what they have built begins to fall in around them. And what they've been seeking to keep afloat just bursts and sinks and they drown. Folks, what a terrible price we are paying over the absence of peace. Verse 4 of Ecclesiastes 2. And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. What is this all about? Why do we live like this? This is our lives. Why do we live like this? When are we going to wise up? Where and how is it all going to end up? An explosion, a meltdown, a breakdown, where we just crack up and blow up. What a terrible price we are paying over the absence of peace. Well, let's pause to take a look at this, because it's more common, it's closer to us than we would like to think. The absence of peace. First of all, would you note the race? The race, verse 4. And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. You see, it's not about serving others and serving together, but about serving self. It's not about advancing a common cause, a shared quest, striving for the highest good, but about advancing a self-centered agenda for my own good to the defeat, removal and annihilation of all rivals. It's not about cooperating and complementing, but about competing. I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Note the race. First, best, most, only. You understand that there can be no peace there, because there's no place for peace there, because you're never done, you're never finished, you're never still, you're never at rest, chasing, 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 chasing. The race. And the Bible here says it springs from envy. And let's not fool ourselves. Envy is really all about personal insecurity. And when we're insecure, we fight. We get defensive. We have to prove ourselves and justify ourselves, not to please God. There's nothing wrong with trying to please God. And not to stretch self and better self. There's nothing wrong with stretching yourself and bettering yourself. But to outdo others by downdoing others. There's a lot wrong with that. Because the price of that race is the absence of peace. I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, the chasing after the wind. How true is the observation endlessly placed out? Get this. And some of us may well blush here, so I'll not look up for a moment. We waste our time spending money we don't have, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like and who don't care. I'll look up now. Recognize any of that? I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, the chasing after the wind. We waste our time spending money we don't have, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like and who don't care. The race. And there are as many racetracks, fast tracks, inside tracks within the life of the church as there are outside in the world. A.W. Tozer wrote this more than a generation ago, but listen, he doesn't miss when he writes this. You'd think he was alive today. Listen to this. He says this: "What can we say then when Christian men vie with one another for place and position? What can we answer when we see them hungrily seeking for praise and honour? How can we excuse that passion for publicity which is so glaringly evident among Christian leaders? What about political ambition in church circles? What about the fevered pan that is stretched out for more and bigger love offerings? What about the shameless egotism among Christians? How can we explain the gross man-worship that habitually blows up one and another popular leader to the size of a colossus? What about the hypocritical hand-kissing of moneyed men by those purporting to be sound preachers of the gospel?" And Tozer then answers his question with a thought-provoking comment. He says, "There is only one answer to these questions. It is simply that in these manifestations we see the world and nothing but the world. No passionate profession of love for souls can change evil into good. These are the very sins that crucify Jesus." And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. How much of the posturing and politicking and professing and manoeuvring and manipulating and managing in the church is nothing more than the race, the religious race of envy. A concern about the absence of peace. Note the race, but then did you note the rage? The rage, verse 5. "The fool folds his hands and ruins himself." It's not about self-denial, which in God's book is self-deliverance. This is self-defeating. It's not self-satisfaction, but self-strangling. Not self-discovery and self-development, but self-destruction. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. The rage here, in gaining what we want, we discover that what we have gained is not really what we wanted. In winning the war of envy, there are precious few left close to enjoy the spoils with. Indeed, the spoils of that war spoil us. Because when the fighting is done, when the project concluded, and when the winner is announced, when the battle is over, there is still no peace. And there's no one left close by. And we can't live with ourselves. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Here's how one worker put it. And this is a fella in Christian work. He said, "Work had always been highly esteemed in our family, and hard work was seen as the primary tool for success. I figured if it was good to work 10 hours, it would be even better to work 14. I would come home feeling that I hadn't worked enough, so I tried to cram even more into my schedule. My life wasn't abundant. It was a frantic sprint from 1 hour to the next. I can remember times when fatigue left me feeling isolated and alienated. feelings that previously had been foreigners to me. I became frustrated, and laughter, which had always been my most treasured companion, had silently slipped away. I was dominated by shoulds and ought tos and musts. I would awaken unrefreshed in the morning with a tired kind of resentment and hurry through the day trying to uncover and meet the demands of others. Days were not lived but endured. I was exhausted trying to be a hope constantly rekindled for others, straining to live up to their images of me. I had worked hard to build a reputation as one who was concerned, available and involved. Now I was being tyrannized by it. Often I was more at peace in the eyes of others than in my own. Hurry needs answers, answers need categories, categories need labeling and dissecting. The peace I was trying to maintain had no time for rhythm and awe, for mystery and wonder. In order to keep up my incessant activity, God was simply reduced to fit into my schedule. I suffered because God didn't fit. Some of us have registered with that because that's the rage with some of us. There's no rest. There's no peace. And some of us and many more are in trouble like that. And I don't believe that it's overstating the point for me to say that some hearing me are killing themselves. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Then would you note the realization, verse 6. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Not mechanically striving, but meaningfully stretching. Not foregoing contentment and satisfaction and rest, but finding and living in contentment and satisfaction and rest. Not feeling threatened by everyone and feeling rejected and slighted by their successes, but rejoicing with others because we live from the same hand, God's, and we live under the same sun, which is big enough and has place for all of us together and to make it together. Not panic, but peace. Not what you endlessly try to do, but whom you assuredly, certainly, personally know. Not insecure by yourself, because you always will be by yourself, but secure in Him. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. In a few verses, the writer's going to say, and Lord willing we'll go on to that next week, that 2 are better than 1, but in this instance, 1 is better than 2. The realization. God says, be still and know that I am God. Hear me now. Don't you think that the enemy of your soul knows that verse? And don't you think that he knows what happens when you seek God like that? And so he fills our world with noise and demand and fear. But God says, be still and know that I am God. I mean, what would some of us not give for just a handful with tranquility? For the chaotic traffic in our minds to stop. A handful with tranquility. Isn't it true, some hearing me or watching or listening on the CD, and our nervous systems have been on the red alert of a war footing for so long and in so much. A handful of tranquility. The realization, hear it, I need, would someone please stop me? Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. What if? Won't someone please stop me? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. I must! Won't someone please stop me? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. I can't! Won't someone please stop me? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. If I... Won't someone please stop me? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Folks, when are we going to realize what really matters? Do you remember what we noted last time we were here? You can't take it with you when you go, but you can. It's all dependent on what it means, on what it is. And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. You can't take that with you. Why would you want to take that with you? That which rots and ruins and spoils and kills and separates and troubles. You can't take that with you when you go. Why would you want to? But there are some things you can. It's all dependent on what it means and is. Verse 6, better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. What really matters? A concern about the absence of peace. The absence of peace is costing us. And the absence of peace is killing us. Now think about it, and don't put your hand up or nod your head, because this is a very personal thing that I'm going to say. But how many of our health issues, how many of our visits to the doctors are due to the absence of peace? How many sleepless nights caused by the absence of peace? How many short tempers, sharp tongues, paranoid minds connected to the absence of peace? How much of what is the matter with us, of what is wrong with us, is about the absence of peace? The absence of peace is costing us. It's killing us. The realization, and here, peace is not found in a bottle or a book or a building. Peace is not found in a prescription or a formula. Peace is not found in some certain number of steps, but it's found in only one person, the only Saviour, the Most High God. I told you Stuart is a changed man. And I was saying to Valerie just on Friday, because she's just marvelling at how at peace he is, even though things are very difficult. And I said to her, you understand that you can only get peace from one source. Only God can do that. And God says to a turbulent world, and to the fraught and frazzled and frightened people within it, he says, be still and know that I am God. Let's turn to where that's found. It's Psalm 46. Psalm 46. Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. Selah, consider these things. I got to thinking there, just as I've been standing, the thoughts that were crossed my mind before. I wonder if God put in these wee selahs, because some of us, when we read that, we think, I don't have time to stop and consider it. But we need to, and so God's put them in. He's saying, this is something that you need to stop and just think about. Verse 4, there's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. Just stop and think about those things. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he's brought on the earth. He makes war cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. It is again, Selah. Consider these things. To a turbulent world, and to the fraught and frazzled and frightened people within it, God says, be still and know that I am God. And then turn to what the Bible says, please, in Isaiah 9. And we've already sung about this evening, Isaiah chapter 9. And verse 6, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The seal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Hear what I'm saying. The one who will call to order and bring to account the abuse of power is the same one who can bring peace to chaos and light to darkness and rest to striving. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. It's not a prescription for peace. It's not a philosophy of peace. It's the Prince of Peace. He's the Prince of Peace, the person of God himself. Be still and know that I am God. The one who will call to order and bring to account the abuse of power is the same one who can bring chaos, who can bring rather peace to chaos, light to darkness, rest to striving. And he says, be still and know that I am God. That's the realization. Some of you didn't realize that I nearly got that the wrong way down. Then when you think about the response, and very simply, what is your response? Well, let's just take a moment or two to think about this. What is your response? Consider what Jesus says about the race. Remember, the race is in verse 4 of Ecclesiastes 4. And I saw that all labour and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbour. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Well, what does Jesus say about the race? We'll turn to it. Luke 14. Luke 14. And verse 1. Luke 14, verse 1. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. Let's go down to verse 7. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honour at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honour, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this man your seat. Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honoured in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or relatives, or your rich neighbours. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. That's what Jesus says about the race. What's your response? Now, what does Jesus say about the rage? Remember, verse 5 of Ecclesiastes 4 is the rage. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. What does Jesus say about the rage? Turn please to Matthew 11. Matthew 11 and verse 28. And Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's what Jesus says about the rage. I wonder what's your response? And then what does Jesus say about the realization of himself? Be still and know that I am God. What does Jesus say about that realization? Turn please to John 14. John 14 and verse 27. John 14:27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." That's what Jesus says about the realization of himself as the Prince of Peace. What is your response? Hear it. He is the Prince of Peace. He brings peace to stormy seas. Be still and know that I am God. He speaks peace to troubled minds. Be still and know that I am God. He delivers peace to tortured bodies. Be still and know that I am God. He sends peace to heaving hearts. Be still and know that I am God. He ministers peace to tormented lives. Be still and know that I am God. He brings peace to you. He speaks peace to you. He delivers peace to you. He sends peace to you. He ministers peace to you. My peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Be still and know that I am God. The response. Here's a question. What does silence create? What does being still before him enable? Well, think about this. It makes room for listening. It gives us freedom to observe. It allows time to think. It provides us space in which we can feel. It lets us broaden our awareness. It opens us to the entry of peace. It invites us to know our limitations and to begin to see God's vastness. David Brainerd wrote, "In the silences I make, in the midst of the turmoil of life, I have an appointment with God. From these silences I come forth with spirit refreshed and with a renewed sense of power. I hear a voice in the silences and become increasingly aware that it's the voice of God. Oh, how comfortable, how comforting is a little glimpse of God. Be still and know. Be still and know. Be still and know that I am God." The response. And then what about the release? The release. I came across a prayer. This prayer is written by a committed Christian, a trusting Christ one, who nevertheless found his or herself in the pit of depression. I'm not talking about just being a wee bit down, I'm talking about depression. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but whoever they are, they're in a very dark place when they wrote this. And this prayer, like the writings of the preacher in Ecclesiastes, will be uncomfortable for some to hear, because they suppose that such things shouldn't be uttered, we shouldn't talk about them. But they are very real. Because they're found here with us and here in us, more than we perhaps dare confess or truly know under the sun. Here's the prayer. Dear Jesus, really the trouble is that we don't want to be here at all. This big black cloud that we don't like and don't really understand looms over our lives and shuts out the sun. We want to run away. Best of all, to run away and be with you. We want to scream and scream and scream all the madness and the badness out, but we're afraid of people hearing, and so we lock it all up inside. Why do you want us here? What do you want to do with us? We really don't think we can cope, neither with the present nor with the future. We're afraid of the dark, Lord. Please wake up in the morning, we wish we hadn't. We wish the day didn't exist and we could just slip into oblivion. Not night, because often that's filled with nasty dreams, but nice, quiet, peaceful oblivion, best of all with you. The release, now hear it. If this is where we truly are and how we truly are, then it is what and the way that we must unreservedly pray. And can I tell you, God can take it. He's not going to explode over it. He's not going to burst into tears over it. He's not going to crumble into a million pieces if we pray like that. But we will crumble into a million pieces if we don't pray like that. You see, this is what getting over the absence of peace is all about. Not just a release for us, but a release from us. Now get that. Not just a release for us, but a release from us. And is this not precisely what we see in verse 6 of Ecclesiastes 4? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Not just a release for us, but a release from us. Do you see the release? Two handfuls with toil. And in exchange, one handful with tranquility. What are you holding on to with your two hands that is worth the absence of peace? What are you striving after with all your might, with your two hands, at the expense of the peace of God? Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Not just a release for us, but a release from us. Even that. Because you can go like that and you can keep juggling. You can't do anything when you release like that. Two handfuls with tranquility for one handful with... Two handfuls with toil, rather, for one handful with tranquility. The release. And can I remind you, and can I inform you tonight, that God holds what you can't. He holds what you can't. And God gives what you could never achieve, even if He gave you 1,000,000 years to achieve it. God holds what you can't. He gives what you can never achieve, even one handful with tranquility for your two handfuls with toil. How often have I been brought back to this because I'm often living it, because I'm slow and thick. One by one, He took them from me. All the things I valued most, till I was empty-handed, every glittering toy was lost. And I walked earth's highways grieving in my rags and poverty, until I heard His voice inviting, lift those empty hands to me. Then I turned my hands toward heaven, and He filled them with the store of His own transcendent riches, till they could contain no more, and at last I comprehended with my stupid mind and dull, that God cannot pour His riches into hands already full. And God's inviting you tonight to give Him your two handfuls of toil for His one handful of peace. Let's pray.